Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of the Low-Code Café, episode 102. Today, the main theme will be integrating Stripe payments into applications. But before that, let me welcome the new people in this event, already at the 102 edition. My name is Bogdan Litescu. I'm the founder and CEO of Plant an App, and this event is a community event that we do every week. It's about sharing knowledge that we find on our support channel or inside our teams. Sometimes we also have special guests from the community showcasing interesting techniques, systems that they've built. So if you want to present in this event, we'd love to host you. As you notice, this event is being recorded, so 101 of very interesting content already available on our YouTube channel, just from this Low-Code Cafe series. But there are many other training videos as well, so very good place to find training content. So let's dig in. Today, the hero of the day is Dale Warner, our head of support. He will give us some stories from the trenches, from the support channel, and then he will continue by showing us Stripe in action. Dale?
Great, hello. Let me get my screen shared out here. Alrighty, so in the support from the trenches segment, we have a number of hotfixes that are being released this week. There are 8 of them. Previously, we had 4, and this is to version 1.21. Some of these, there's a number of these, but the first one is recommended, and we're actually going to do these here in just a second. So I'll show you how that works. But we have a fix for on our form builder. It's throwing a bunch of errors into the log that just clutter up the log. It's not breaking anything, but we recommend that you install that just so that your log doesn't get cluttered and we can see the real errors that are there. There's a fix for those of you who are using the currency field. The date time picker inline option wasn't working before, and actually I'm going to jump out and show that here real quickly. This is when you have a date and time picker that's configured for inline. It shows up open already, so that's kind of useful for some implementations, and so that will that's simply checking the inline option in that tool. On our star rating field, Oh, and by the way, last week we had problems with people being able to chat with us. If anybody wants to say hi on the chat, I appreciate just knowing that it's going to work. The star captions in our star rating field didn't support tokens, and now it does. There's a fix for data tables that correctly calculating the sum on template and formula fields. So that may be of use to some of you. We had an issue where if you try to change the listing title and you were just trying to change the case of it, so you might be changing the capitalization of the way a title was done in a module, we weren't capturing that. The change wasn't taking place, but now that's fixed. And we had a customer that had virtual directory applications and pop-ups weren't working, so that's fixed also. And finally, a search boost. The search product was not indexing in a certain case with certain database rules, and that has fixed as well. So I thought it would just be useful to take a look at how hotfixes get installed under our new interface, and so we can take a look at that. We don't need this anymore. But we're going to work in the campfire.plantanapp.com website here. And I'm going to go to the updates section. So this is our old interface, and you have a button here to try the new user interface. So in the old interface, if you go to hotfixes, you could see all the ones that are sitting and waiting to go, and you could click install. In the new interface, when we switch to that and go to hotfixes, we see a whole lot less content, and that's because we're grouping them. So when you go to the details of something, that you can see that installing this one hotfix gets you all of these. And so that certainly speeds things along. And then next, if you only want, if you're trying to pick out just a particular update, for example, if you need the currency field bind correction, you need this 521.10. The way that we do things, you always get, if you install this .10, you'll get 9 and 8 as well. They're just all bundled in together. But you can pick one out of the list, and that's done here on install specific version. So it shows you all the versions that are less than current, and you could pick out and just install just one of them. But better yet, the easiest thing to do is to select all. If it's appropriate for you to install the hotfixes, you can just select them and then say install the selected hotfixes. It's going to ask if that's what you want to do for certain, and then it'll go about doing that. So that's going to take a minute or two, and we'll go back. We'll come back here in a minute and take a look. But we think that a new user interface for hotfixes really just speeds along getting the ones that you want and getting all of them if you want everything. I will put in we did this meeting today. The Low Code Cafe is a webinar format. It's very it's a more of a presentation that we do teaching on a particular topic, but on Fridays we do Campfire, which is in a meeting format. And so it's this same hour on Fridays at 10 a.m. Central. So we invite you to join us for that. And the link to that is coming up. Let's see. So we have the links for this episode, and let me put that on the chat. And thank you for posting some hellos there. So all these links are now on the chat. And so there's our regular, you can register in advance for the Campfire. You can get to our webinar recordings, the community portal, which is a great spot to get questions answered from both us and our community members. The webinar feedback form, you can tell us what you like and don't like about Low Code Cafe. And then links for this particular episode, we have Stripe, the Stripe documentation, and our Stripe checkout actions setup form. This is in our documentation. So we'll be looking a little bit at all of those today. With that, I'm going to move on to our hands-on low coding, and this is Integrate Anything Stripe Part 1. I really expect that there's going to be a Part 2 for a couple of reasons. But let's talk about our goal. The goal is to be able to use Stripe to collect money from your clients. There's actions that we have built in that will help you collect a direct payment from Stripe. Also, you can set people up for a subscription so that you'll get paid every month or week or day or whatever your deal is with Stripe. And so we'll at least get through direct payments today. Subscription, we may start to get into. And then beyond that, Stripe has a full API that you can access. And we're not going to deal with that today. We're going to be only talking about our actions that are already built into the product. But I suspect at a later, perhaps Stripe Part 2, we could get into some of the more in-depth APIs and more direct, where we don't have actions, but you might want to do some other things with Stripe. So this is the setup that we're going to do for direct payments. We have some setup to do in Stripe. We're going to do this from zero, right? So you'll see the whole thing happen. And then also within Plant an App, we have some setup that we have to do. And the first thing is to install the Stripe add-on. So I am going to get that started while we talk about some of the other stuff. We are still in our new user interface on updates. That's completed. And so if we were to go to the add-ons, we can see what has and has not been installed. And we can just look up the new interface. We can just search directly for the thing that we want, or we could scroll forward, but the Stripe integration is here, and we'll just go ahead and install that. And once we do that, then the Stripe specific components of Plant an App will be installed. There's some actions and some form fields and things like that that get installed, and so we'll let that happen as we go. So with Stripe, I was pleased to find that it's very easy to at least get started. You can set up an account, get set up in test mode, and start testing APIs relatively quickly. So I just thought I'd walk through the whole process here today. So Stripe.com, payments website. If you go to sign in and you don't have an account, it will give you the ability to sign up down here. And so we'll do that. And I am going to use our support email. And we'll generate a password here, fill it in, and create our account. It's nice when you get validation from Stripe that I have an excellent password. Okay. So they want to verify our email, so make sure that we're not lying to them. So I have my email set up here, and perhaps it's going to get me the Stripe things. Aha, here it is, Stripe. So verify your email, and we'll click and verify the address. And that's pretty straightforward. So now it's telling us what it would like us to do to activate our payments. I'm going to close this out and go back to the window I was working on originally. In order to activate payments, in order to get started, the only requirement that I found is it really wants to have a business name. So we'll get forward to that point and then save the rest of this bank account details and stuff like that for later. And we'll just do the minimum required. So we'll do an individual business. I'm going to stick with what I did last time to make sure I don't get into trouble. So I'm going to say it's a private corporation, and it's going to ask me for a business name, and that's the minimum it needs. And if we go that far, I think it will save that much, and that's all we'll need to do for setup. So exiting that, what we see over here is for developers, we are in test mode, and it's got a publishable key and a secret key and the link to the documentation. So these are the things that we're going to need here in a little bit going forward. So this should be enough to get started with Stripe. So we've created our test account with a business name. We've installed the Stripe add-on. There's some other things that we need to do. We need to get Webhooks set up to go to Stripe, and Stripe to our site, and Webhook Signing Secret. So the underlying idea is that when we do a payment on Stripe, it's going to collect funds for us. The user actually traverses from our site out to Stripe. All the payment and processing and PCI compliance things are handled on Stripe, and then they're sent back to our site to a success URL or to a cancel URL. And one of the issues there is we need to know securely that a payment was actually processed, that we've collected money, so that we can deliver whatever the services are, turn on, whether we're signing a role or doing whatever to provide the value to the client. So in order to make sure that that happens securely, Stripe sends us a post that has the information about what got done. And so we have to activate that. That's built into our product, and you'll see how it fits in, but we have to do the security of activating webhooks from Stripe. All of the documentation, and again, I provided this link, all the documentation for how to do the Stripe checkout is on our documentation page here. And it's a little bit involved, and we're just going to walk through it, and we'll be doing some of this out of order, but we'll be completing all of this. So the first part about this, in the Stripe dashboard, we need the API keys, and we've actually gotten the API keys. We can go there and take a look at what our links will get you there. So that same thing that we were seeing again on that homepage a minute ago has the publishable key and the secret key and things like that. So that's already set up for us. We're going to be doing, we need a webhook, which is on the Webhooks page, and it's got to be pointing to, we're on version DNN 9.0 or above, and so we're going to be using this version of the webhook. That's what we need to activate in Stripe. And just as a note, we need to update our documentation. We no longer support these earlier versions of DNN. So let's turn on this webhook. There was the link there, or we can just do it through navigation, but we'll go to the webhooks, and we want to add an endpoint. And the endpoint that we want to add, I've just copied that URL. Obviously, we need to fix the beginning part of that. So we're activating it for campfire.plantainapp.com. So I'm going to pop that into the URL. So it's going to now, Stripe is going to send activity to this predefined special URL that we provide. Have to provide a description, but I will. It's going to listen to events that are happening on our Stripe account, and we have to pick endpoints. I think we have to pick endpoints, and being a lazy person, I'm just going to send all of our endpoints to this. So everything that Stripe is doing on our behalf, it's going to send to this. We could probably limit that, but I actually haven't done the research on exactly which ones we need, so we'll just send everything and we'll add it. So now we have a webhook that's enabled. Everything that happens, 194 different events that can happen on Stripe, are all getting sent to our API. Now this is the part where we need to tell our system what a valid Stripe notification will include. It's going to include this signing secret in it, and this is our test account. This is information that you would typically hold closely for yourself, but since this is our test account and doesn't mean anything, we're publicly displaying it. So we've copied this signing secret, and now the question is, where does this go? So it's telling us in our documentation that the signing secret of the webhook is required. We use that to authenticate the Stripe calls, and so we've noted it down, and it goes in the DNN file later. But I'm going to skip on down and do that, find that part of it in our documentation so we can get it taken care of now. It's here in the step 4, the signing secret, and we are now using Stripe. It's above version 5.11. So this is the variation that we need. We have to add this key to our web config, and it's going to use our signing secret in it. And this goes into the configuration app settings. So in our site, you're going to have access to the config manager or to the file system to do this. We'll go into our web config and look for the configuration app settings section of it. So we'll scroll on down. Sit here, app settings. So this is where it goes. And so I'm just going to paste that in here. And that's the template of what we need. The portal ID for this portal is 0, and for most of you that will be the correct. So it should look like this, the DNN sharp API signing secret key is that, and then we, instead of using that, I'm going to use the Windows clipboard to grab this that I copied a little while ago. So we're telling it our signing secret key. And so now our API will know whether or not to accept that information coming from Stripe. So we save those changes, and we should be good to go. That's going to cause a refresh of the site, so it's going to take a minute for that to come back. I'll hit a refresh, and we'll move on in our progress here. So we've installed our add-on, we've activated webhooks on Stripe, and we've put the signing secret into the web config. That should get us all set up. All right. So here's where what we're kind of going to do to get a direct payment set up. So the idea is we're going to have a name, a description, an amount, and a quantity of an item. We're just going to take the very simplest case, but we're going to get all those fields and then put it in a buy now button so that we'll collect the money from Stripe and make sure that we get a good indication that we paid and do either success or cancel. So that's kind of where we're going. What we're going to need is a checkout page. So this would be like a Stripe direct payment page. And it's going to have a success and cancel pages as part of that so that we know that we've got it. So we're going to create some pages. In the structure of Campfire, we have we put contributions, and I'm adding it to this one particularly so that those of you who participate in Campfire get access to it. You can see how it's put together, and this will serve as a good reminder. Anybody who isn't who doesn't attend Campfire, if you'll attend, we'll give you access to this site as well. But we put things in a folder structure, all the different people that participate, and so I'm going to put it down here in my 2022 contributions, just a place to put it on the site. So we will look for contributions and Corner and 2022, and so we're going to create a new page called Stripe. And we'll give access to this to our admins and citizen developers and low-code engineers. Now that we have a Stripe page, we'll create a couple more pages within that. The first is a page called Direct Payment Example, and provide the same permissions. It's in the menu, so that's good. And I also want a success page and a cancel page. We're not going to do much with these other than prove that they work. So this is we don't need that in the menu. And last page, we'll do a cancel page. You can be much more imaginative with this in terms of what you provide besides a blank page. A cancel page might be, for example, you provide instructions on where do you want to go next, or I see you've canceled, whatever. A success page might be all about the delivery of telling them what to do with the item. Again, they might arrive at the success page outside of the flow of Stripe, so you don't want to actually deliver the product there. You're going to deliver it through the API. We'll talk about that. Oh, and my cancel page doesn't need to be in the menu. went to the cancel page, didn't need to do that. So we'll go back to pages. And contributions. L 2022. Stripe. We'll edit. No. Okay, I am going to navigate to this direct payment example so we can start building our form. And that should have gone to a new page and didn't, so I don't know what's going on with that. So we'll do it through here. So this is the place where we'll do the rest of our work, and I'm going to put it into edit mode so we can do some things. Delete out this extra content we didn't need. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We've built, or what we have done, we've built our success pages and cancel page. So now we're going to build a form that that does the checkout. Now there's some requirements, and we'll go back to looking at our documentation, but we're going to have to load this Stripe JavaScript onto our page. So we're going to do that through static files. We'll have a name, a description, amount, of quantity, and add a buy now button. So let's get through that. So we'll add a form. We're going to start out blank. And this is going to be our form. We'll give it a name. So let's go back to our documentation and scroll back up and do things that were mentioned here. On page load, we want to add a static file, and what we need is this Stripe JavaScript. And so this just gets the form, makes this JavaScript available to the form to work with. So on page load, we want to look for a static, load a static files option. It's a JS URL, and this is, it doesn't matter what ID we give it here. I'm going to call it Stripe, and then this is the part that does matter. It needs to be the js.stripe.v3. So this is going to get it onto our page for us, and that's the setup that we're going to need. Beyond that, we're going to have some fields for name, description, amount, quantity. So let's get those done. Those will be text fields. Name, and we're just going to take it as it comes, and we'll clone that, and this will be description. The next is amount and quantity. So we can do a currency field here, for example. Amount and we'll do a number field for the amount, for the quantity. So we have name, description, amount, quantity. And now we're going to need a buy now button. And this is where all the magic is going to happen, so that in our on click, this is where we start adding the activity to collect some money. So we're going to be using the Stripe checkout action, and let me show you how to put that together. First, we'll add that so we can see it. So in our list here, we have Stripe, and we're going to use the Stripe Stripe checkout. And so it has description, error message, condition. We're always going to do this, so that's all straightforward. We're going to need our API credentials, and the easiest way to do that is to go into our manage credentials, and we'll add it there, and then that's going to be available for everywhere else where we need to do it. So we're going to have a group that's going to be called Stripe. And within that group, we're going to have a new entry that's going to be called test credentials, and it wants a secret key. So this is where we go back to Stripe and let's see, look at our API keys, and there's a secret key listed right here. So we're going to grab our secret key, and actually it's got a click to copy, so I'll put it right on the clipboard and put it here and save. So now it's all set up in our credentials. My RoboForm is trying to do things for me. So now it's here in our list. We have a group called Stripe. It has test credentials right there. So now those will be available in the credential store for whenever we need it. Stripe has a thing called a publishable key. This is the public key. And so in the same way, we're going to click to copy that and put it here. So now Stripe has the credentials. This action has the credentials it needs to work with Stripe. The entry itself points it to our test. So the fact that we're in test, we're going to be able to use a test credit card, collect money. But when you go to live, you would complete all the setup on Stripe, get to the point where you have credentials in the live account, and then add that as an entry here, so you can flip these over to actually collecting money. So the other things that we're going to need is an entity name, and this is actually, our terminology has changed. It's actually a list that we're going to get. And so we're going to provide a list of what we're trying to charge for, what we want Stripe to collect for. We can provide a reference, customer email if we know it. We're doing a direct payment, so we'll set that up. And so we'll fill in these other things here as we go. Let's work. We have to have this entity, this list. To not lose anything, I'm going to save that progress so far, and then go back to our documentation. The documentation refers to create entity. Again, this is create a list, but it's got to have things like a name, a description, amount, a quantity, a currency. It can have images, but this list has to have this content, and that's what gets passed to Stripe. So I am going to show you how to create this quite easily in our actions. Before we actually get to Stripe checkout, we will use create list from SQL to create this for us. And so the structure is going to be something like select name, just going to double check these as values are naming the columns that are getting passed to Stripe, and I want to make sure I've got them right. Name, description, amount, quantity, currency, and we're not going to do images. We don't need that. So currency is correct. So this actual SQL statement you can use, and then so we're going to bind things to this. So the name is going to be populated from our name field above. And so this comes from, the field is called name, It has an ID of name. So these all happen to match up. Name, description, amount, quantity. We're going to get all those from here. So description is coming from description. Quantity on the form. Oh, I skipped amount. Doesn't matter the order here. Amount is coming from. And then the last one, currency, we can look it up, but it's actually, we're going to pass it USD. We're going to do US dollars, just kind of hard coding this form to work in dollars. So this is going to create a, we're using SQL, but it's not actually reading data from a table. If you had a shopping cart, for example, that was full of items, you would actually want to select out of your shopping cart and come up with these columns and have a number of items. But this is going to put one item in a list that we can easily pass to Stripe. And so we're going to call this our items list. And that's all we're going to need. It's going to put that into the list. So now when we go to Stripe, we can say that the entity name or the list name is called items list. And so now Stripe will know all of the things that we're trying to do. These other things are not required. Customer email, we do need to know it's a direct payment. We're going to allow it to be EN for English. Payment description. This is an optional thing that I'll show you how it comes out. It'll come out in Stripe. We don't have a customer ID at this point. We're not transferring money around within Stripe. We don't have a fee. So now we have a spot, success URL, cancel URL, and we can grab these from our site. So we'll actually navigate to these pages and then use the URLs that are there. So that's contributions, Dale, Stripe. Oh, didn't put them in the menu. All right, that's on me. We'll get them here. I could make them up, but I like to copy and paste. So we'll just navigate to the pages and find them. And this is probably going to get us into trouble too. Because we saw earlier this wasn't navigating correctly. Yep. So I'm just going to make it up here. All right, that wasn't that hard. So we have a success page, and then we have a cancel page. We have to have the correct URLs. So we'll copy that as well. And we're going to put it in here. So the cancel URL is all of that /cancel, and the success URL is all of that success. So this is the fun part here, this on the webhook call. This is the list of actions that are going to execute when checkout session completed happens and it's been validated against that webhook, all that setup work that we did. So long as it's all right, these actions are going to run. If it doesn't have the right signing secret, if somebody's trying to hack you, whatever, so long as they don't have the signing secret, they're not going to be able to fake a payment. So for us, we're just going to throw out into the log that we got this good information. So this will be an administrative alert. You would typically actually, deliver your product or flag the product for delivery, whatever. But we're going to just get the keys that they're providing. So the Stripe session ID is what we're going to log. And we can also grab the response. This is all the JSON, or would be all the JSON that comes back from Stripe. So those two things will go in the log. If we see something in the log, it should be a valid payment. Great. So with all of that done, it's time to test and see if it works. Oh, and we are not, we set up a Bootstrap 5 form, but this didn't come in as Bootstrap 5. So we'll flip our page to Bootstrap 5 and refresh. Okay, so now it's happy. So this is going to be a, we're just going to buy a widget. It's going to be a widget for $100, and we want 3 of them. We hit our buy now button. It goes off to Stripe's checkout. And so we have the ability to go back if we don't want this, but you see it's a widget. It's a total of $300, quantity 3 at $100 each. So Stripe does all this for us automatically. And so now we can pay. If we hit the back button, it takes us to Stripe cancel. So that proves that that thing worked really well. And so back to our payment example and just set it up again. Stripe is nice enough in this test mode to provide a test credit card. It's all 4 2s. So long as you give it a date in the future, it will work, and any code. And so pay. It's routed us back to our success page. And now if we go to our logs and take a look at that, we have an admin alert that includes the session ID that was done with Stripe. Stripe asked us that. And it gave us a raw, and in this particular mechanism, it limits it to 500 characters, so we don't see the full thing, but it shows that it's a checkout session, and the URL that it, the cancel URL, the customer that got created. This is interesting. We can actually look this up, so we'll copy that. The email, and it has all the payment details as part of that content. So if we were actually wanted to, we could have processed out of that content, see what they actually paid, or pull information out. So let's look and see what happened in Stripe. If we go to customers, we can see now that there's a Dale Warner customer. We didn't look here originally, but this is created a minute ago. So this was just created for us. And if we go into it, we can see it's a $300 client is paying for widget. That was the comment that we added on that action. There's no balance. You can see the activity. So the payment was successful. The order was created. All the things that Stripe did for you. If we go over to the payments section, we can see that there was this incomplete $300 transaction. This is the one that I hit cancel on. And then we have the successful one. And so you can see that which customer paid, what payment method. There's risk evaluation that they're doing automatically, all the information that they collected. A big, here are the items that were provided, and the fee that they took out. Stripe doesn't do this for charity. It has succeeded. We have all the information, got some mapping stuff, and it also shows the events and logs, so you could dig into exactly what they're passing you in this, like, checkout session completed. This is the what they sent to that API webhook, and that we could have gotten access to through that token. But you can see that it's 300, no decimal points, so it's showing in cents. So the subtotal, the total, the currency, the customer. This customer it was passed back, so we could make note of that, for example, to hold them to do for a future customer. All the payment details, all the stuff that they passed us. Okay. So that is direct payment and what we were really targeting to get done today. We've got a few minutes left and we'll move on to some other stuff, but it's a great time if you have questions. So Patrick, watch that for me. If a question come up, we'll do that. So this is what we were targeting. Just kind of a reminder, we had to have that JS3. If you don't have the JS3, if you forget that step, you're going to have it's not going to work, and it just kind of will stall out. So that will be when somebody hits the button, nothing's going to happen, and that's the symptom to remind you, hey, you need this static file. You're going to have a list, and just built just the way we did that. So that's direct payment. You can collect money, go forth and collect money. So there's some other Stripe actions that we provide that have to do with creating a customer, creating a plan, creating a subscription. And I won't be able to get into all those today, but we can start on create a customer. That'd be a good one. So we'll need a page for that. And so we'll navigate down here and get that. So this is going to be our create example. And so we'll refresh and get over there. If you can't tell, I'm regretting putting this so far down into the tree path, but whatever. So this is also going to be a form, and we'll put an action form on here. And manage it as a blank form. And so this one is going to be, there is within Stripe, a Stripe credit card field type. And so we'll add a Stripe credit card field type. And it gives us a spot to put in things like address, city, state, zip. I think we're, in the interest of time, we'll just accept the default one here. And then the other thing that we'll do is we're going to add a button that is create customer. Now, my recollection is that this one is not, doesn't actually it does the work with Stripe, but doesn't actually transfer us over to Stripe. So we don't need that JavaScript for this action. So the action that we're going to use here is within Stripe, we're going to do a create customer. And the result of this is going to be a customer ID. So we'll put that on the form here in a second. So the create customer, what we need to do, we've got the Stripe credentials. Because those were the only one, those came in automatically for us. So we don't have to do anything. The Stripe credit card field, we're just going to pick the one. This is picking the one that's off of our form. And the output token is going to be the Stripe customer. So that's going to, when this action runs, Stripe customer is going to be filled up with whatever the Stripe customer ID is. I want to show that on the screen. So I am going to add a text field and call it Stripe customer. And so it gets an ID Stripe customer. And so it's actually going to put it here onto the form. And in order to make that work, we'll, after we create the customer, we'll do an AJAX call, update form data. AJAX, push everything back onto the form and stay in place. So we have an action. It's going to go out to Stripe on our test site. It's going to use the Stripe credit card field to create a customer and then display the customer on the screen. So let's see if that works. And we still have our Bootstrap 3 problem. I should probably change the site to default themes, default new pages to Bootstrap 3, to Bootstrap 5. Okay, so the Stripe credit card renders this way. And I would have expected it to be capturing a number here. But let's push it, see what happens. Okay. Yeah, that didn't render the way I'd hoped it would. Let's see if I can sort it out. In my test setup, I had actually collected some addresses and things like that. So maybe that's required. We'll do that. So we'll also collect an address and a city. And we'll work with the layout a little bit. And in our action, we'll take advantage of those. Oh, nope. It's in the Stripe credit card where we take advantage of those. So the address is the address, and the city is the city, and this information will get passed on to Stripe. So let's see if that helps get render better. All right, so this is the point where I absolutely cheat and show you one that's done instead of actually figuring out what. This is what should have happened. We'll figure that out for another time. So it should render with the spot where you can put in card. So you and all the information 12 or 22 with a code and a zip code. Hit create customer and it gives you a customer ID. So that's what should happen. There's something about the way that that's rendering. I see it's taller and something went wrong with that. So we'll sort that out. But that is Stripe create customer. Okay, we're kind of towards the end of our hour. Last chance for questions. I hope that that has enabled you to collect money. The Stripe, we did Stripe create customer, or almost did it. The create plan ends up creating a product that you're going to charge X dollars a month for or a week for, and then create subscription is the combination of those two, where you can pass a customer and a plan, and that will then collect the money from the customer immediately, unless you set up a trial period, but it'll set up it'll actually collect the money and then set it up for collection automatically in the following month if it's a monthly product, for example, and so automatically collect money for you for your subscription. There's some other great features that are part of Stripe where you can direct your customers to work with their subscriptions. So it sends them to Stripe and they can change the payment method or update it. If it's expired, they can cancel the subscription so that it allows them to directly work with the subscription. And then with that, there's also in that area of webhooks, you'll need to set up a webhook that's listening for those kinds of events. It's the same, similar to what we did last week with Zoom, so that you can see, for example, if a credit card charge tried to go through and didn't work because of an expiration date, or if the client has canceled their subscription, that your platform can react to those events as well. So there's lots more that we can do with Stripe, plus the additional things that are in their API, and you can peruse that as well. So hope that gets you there for collecting payments out of Stripe. Any final thoughts? Great. We will continue this. I don't know that we'll get to it next week, but in a future session we'll do Stripe level 2, and we'll talk about this more, I'm sure, over Campfire in 2 days. So if you want to join us there. Good deal. Happy low coding, and we will see you again next week for an episode of the Low Code Cafe.